Hello and welcome, Rabload viewers, to RTD's News English edition. As usual, we bring to you the major and top highlights of tonight. President Gelle expressed his gratitude to his fellow citizens following his re-election. Results of the 2026 presidential elections. And on the international scene, announcement of a naval blockade and threats in the Strait of Hormuz. Tensions between Washington and Tehran. Those were the major and top highlights. Welcome back to our newsroom, our blood viewers. In a speech delivered, His Excellency the President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, thanked citizens for their renewed confidence in him and said that this moment represents a decisive turning point in our country's history. The President of the Republic expressed his feeling after winning by a very large margin, of showing that citizens strongly support him and want him to continue leading the country. The Djiboutian people have chosen stability, unity, and continued progress, the head of state said. I receive your support with seriousness, pride, and above all, a strong sense of duty, President Guelleh added. He said his re-election is not the victory of one man, but of an entire people united, aware of the challenge and focused on what matters most, peace, development, and the strength of Djibouti. The president also welcomed the high number of citizens who took part in the presidential election of April 10, 2026. Your strong participation gives this election clear strength and real legitimacy, he said, adding that he will carry out this new mandate with determination, loyalty, and commitment. Together, we will continue the work already started and build our progress, the president promised. We will face challenges with courage, and together we will build a stronger, more united, and more ambitious Djibouti, he said, once again thanking all citizens.
Nous poursuivrons l'œuvre engagée, nous renforcerons nos acquis, nous affronterons les défis avec courage et ensemble, nous continuerons à bâtir un Djibouti plus fort, plus uni et plus ambitieux. Merci pour votre confiance, merci pour votre fidélité, merci pour votre engagement au service de la République. Vive Djibouti, vive la République. Je vous remercie.
The messages of congratulations continue to pour in for His Excellency the President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, following his victory in the presidential election held on April 10, 2026. In this context, the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, sent a telegram of congratulations expressing his best wishes for the president's success. The president also received a similar message from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz. The congratulations also came from a number of leaders, including Chadian President Mohammed Idris Deby and Ethiopian Prime Minister Mr. Abiy Ahmed Ali, who spoke by phone with the president, as well as Rwandan President Paul Kagame, while the talks covering bilateral relations and issues of mutual interest. The President of the Republic also received congratulatory messages from international and regional figures, such as well as from the United States, which reaffirmed its commitment in strengthening its relations with Djibouti. Yemeni President Rashad Al-Almi was also among those who sent congratulations. The Minister of Interior, Mr. Said Nuh Hassan, accompanied by the governors of interior regions, the governor of Djibouti City, and the National Director of Elections, handed over the preliminary results of the presidential elections held on Friday, April 10, 2026 to the Constitutional Council today, Monday. The ceremony was held at the headquarters of the Constitutional Council in the presence of its president in accordance with the laws and regulations governing the electoral process. This was done in full compliance with the electoral timetable after the collection, consolidation, and verification of reports from polling stations across the country had been completed. On this occasion, all preliminary results, together with all electoral documents used during the election, including polling station reports, voting, counting sheets, and supporting documents, were handed over to the President of the Constitutional Council. These documents will enable the highest court to fully exercise its role in overseeing, reviewing, and verifying the results in accordance with its constitutional powers. On this occasion, the Minister of Interior praised the smooth conduct of the election in a calm and responsible atmosphere and expressed his gratitude to all those involved in its organization, including the administrative authorities, defense and security forces, polling station staff, and citizens for their participation. This step marks a decisive stage in the electoral process, paving the way for the Constitutional Council to announce the final results. A meeting dedicated to preparing the third edition of the Treasure Hunt, Ali Sibih, to host the third edition of the Treasure Hunt. The Secretary General of the State Secretariat for Sports chaired a meeting this morning dedicated to preparing the third edition of the Treasure Hunt competition. Following the two previous editions held on Musha Island in the city of Godoria, the new edition will take place in the city of Ali Sibih on April 23rd. The meeting brought together a number of officials and directors from the administration. Discussions focused on key organizational aspects, including logistics, security, communication, and media coverage, as well as measures related to the environmental preservation and protection. The various challenges planned for this edition were well reviewed and approved. The competition of the judging panel was also decided. In addition, an inspection mission is scheduled in the coming days to assess the site that will host the event. The Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training held a review meeting dedicated to the first cohort of short-term training programs chaired by the Ministry's Secretary General. The meeting brought together all stakeholders, including teachers, trainers, trainees, heads of training institutions, and private sector and financial partners, providing the training as well as the World Bank, whose support was crucial to the implementation of these programs. These short-term training programs are part of the Skills Project, an initiative aimed at strengthening young people's skills, improving their employability, and facilitating their sustainable integration into the labor market. The project also seeks to adapt training programs to the real needs of the labor market, thereby helping to reduce youth unemployment. During the meeting, the Director General of the Vocational Training, Mr. Mohammed Abdi Gede, gave a detailed presentation of the results. The session was held in two parts: an introductory presentation on the results of the first cohort, followed by a second presentation of the training programs planned for the second cohort. The purpose of this meeting was to review the steps taken, assess the achievements of beneficiaries, identify the challenges encountered, and draw lessons to improve the performance of future cohorts. Discussions highlighted the importance of short courses designed to meet labor market needs and strengthen young people's employability. Participants also formulated practical recommendations aimed at improving the quality of the programs, strengthening educational support, and facilitating beneficiaries' integration into the labor market. In his remarks, the Secretary General of the Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training praised the commitment of all stakeholders and stressed the importance of continuing this collaborative approach to consolidate and sustain the initiative serving young people. With deep sorrow and sadness, we have learned of the death of our colleague Tariq Taha Muhammad Al-Murari, who passed away today in Djibouti. Born on October 23rd, 1963, the deceased was one of the media's professionals who helped enrich the national press scene. He worked at the Radio and Television Corporation during the 1990s and stood out as an outstanding journalist of a very high caliber. He left behind a remarkable professional legacy in a career marked by dedication, during which he earned a respected reputation in the media community. He also leaves behind a wife, several children, and grandchildren. On this sad occasion, the Minister of Information in charge of Posts and Telecommunication, Mr. Radwan Abdullahi Bahdan, and the Director General of Radio and Television, Mr. Adan Abdullahi, who, on behalf of all the staff of the Ministry and the National Radio and Television Corporation of Djibouti, extend their deepest condolences and sincere sympathy to the family and loved ones of the deceased, praying to the Almighty God to grant him his vast mercy, admit him into his spacious paradise, and give his family patience and solace. Indeed, to God we belong, and to him we shall return. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The Federal Republic of Somalia today celebrated the 66th anniversary of the founding of the Somali National Army, which officials held in the capital Mogadishu and across the country, marking a milestone in the history of the modern state since the establishment of this military institution in 1960. As part of preparations for the Games, which will be hosted by Senegal, a training program has been launched to strengthen the skills of young Africans in managing and organizing sporting events. This initiative, led by an educational academy, aims to train hundreds of participants from across the continent to support the successful organization of this international sporting event scheduled to take place in Senegal. Aimed global economic shifts, Africa and the Caribbean are stepping up efforts to expand economic and trade cooperation, even though trade between them remains low, accounting for no more than 3% of their total external trade. Aimed raising tensions between the United States and Iran, the U.S. Central Command announced a sweeping naval blockade targeting Iranian ports following the collapse of talks held in Islamabad. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance left the Pakistani capital without reaching an agreement, saying the failure would be more damaging to Iran than to the United States, underscoring the diplomatic impasse between the two sides. Egypt has intensified its diplomatic ties to contain the Iran crisis amid rising regional tensions and fears of further escalation. According to diplomatic sources, Cairo has activated direct and indirect channels of communication with several parties involved, including Gulf states, in an effort to narrow differences and promote dialogue between the sides. Global financial markets saw mixed moves this week, marked by sharp volatility in all prices in one hand and a continued rise in major technology stocks driven by the growth of artificial intelligence on the other. According to the weekly market report, oil prices experienced significant fluctuations driven by supply and demand factors as well as various economic and geopolitical developments. Well, about this, our blood viewers, we finally conclude this edition. Thank you for being with us, and make sure to tune in later for more as usual. Have a wonderful evening and take care.